to Russell Walker Meets on Glasgow Chamber of Commerce TV. My guest today was born in Glasgow and became well known as the presenter of the Beechgrove Potting Shed and the voice of traffic and travel on BBC Scotland. She still tells drivers where to go, but she's added author to her list of achievements with 3 highly praised crime fiction novels set in her home city. She always brings a ray of sunshine wherever she goes, although as readers of her books will tell you, that doesn't mean she hasn't got a darker side. Welcome, Theresa Talbot. How are you faring during this lockdown?
I have to be honest, and we've spoken about this, I know I'm very, very fortunate during lockdown, and that's not to be smug or whatever. I don't have a very big worry tree. I don't have any children. My parents are no longer with me, so it's just myself and my husband. And I'm faring okay. I'm lucky I've got a garden and I'm healthy, and you know, I know that there's people who are not as lucky, so I really, really feel for them. But yeah, I'm faring okay. It's not brilliant. I miss going out and I miss hill walking, and I haven't taken up golf, but this is the only top that's clean, and even at that, it's not like wildly clean. It's not post-lockdown clean. It's so yeah. What was the question? Oh Jesus! You see, I think the response should be my concentration's going, and I think I'm losing my mind. But other than that, yeah, it's good.
So, I mean, that's like Groundhog Day, isn't it? How are you avoiding kind of Groundhog Day syndrome? What are you doing?
Well, it's weird. I'm kind of like a creature of habit, but I like lots of change. In the way that I'm a gregarious loner, I like being alone, but I like lots of people. It's weird. So to avoid Groundhog Day, I normally do my BBC travel shifts, but I've been furloughed for the moment because there's little point in having travel when there's very little traffic out there. So what am I doing? Do you know, the days bleed into night. But there's a chap on Radio 4 today, I can't remember who he was, and he was talking about the concept of time and how, because of this, our perception of time has altered. So what do I do to avoid Groundhog Day? Luckily the weather's great, so I'm out in the garden a lot. Although, don't tell my editor. I'm meant to be writing my book. No, I'm editing my next book. That takes up quite a lot of time. Go out for my walk, a long walk, and I don't know, suddenly it's like, you know, nighttime, and I think, right, tomorrow I'll get more done, and that's like, crikey, you know, you see things on Twitter and it's like, well, this is the time to write a book or learn a new skill, and you think, no, I'm just trying to keep from not killing someone just now. No, it's I don't know about Groundhog Day. It's I think the garden keeps me sane. It's like being in love. It's the most wonderful thing in a garden, and the whole world can be your garden. Just look out, just adopt someone else's garden, or in the park, or even a tree outside. And gardens change, not just season by season, but day by day and minute by minute. So, you know, I'm looking out just now because beyond you, there's you're not in my house, you're just on my screen. I'm not, you know, I've not lost reality altogether.
Weird.
And I can see, and I'm thinking, oh, crikey, that plant, that leaf is slightly different than it was earlier, the way the light catches it. So gardens are always slightly different.
The stove behind you, you're a great soup maker, I remember.
I can't make soup just now because I've got my laptop on top of the soup pot. I'll tell you, I bought a big giant soup pot. It's about that size. I could actually fit in it, I think. Yeah, I make lots of soup. And I'll tell you what I did this week. I tried to make sourdough bread. Now, apparently you can't go wrong with sourdough. Yeah, you can. Of course you can. It's awful. So, but my husband's too polite to not eat it. I'm not eating it. So he's too polite to tell me how bad it is. So, but I think if there's anyone out there, if Charles Bronson was still here, he'd use it, he'd put it in a sock and use it as a bit of a weapon.
Let's talk about your writing, Theresa. Fill us in on the kind of the main protagonists in your 3 books.
Well, the main protagonist is Una O'Neill. She's my main character, and she's a journalist. And I just love her. I like Una. And she's quite a flawed character. She gets things wrong, but she always supports the underdog. So I wanted a strong female character. And I don't mean one that's, you know, kind of high kicking and does karate chops and can fight her way out of things. I just mean one that every time she's put down, she manages some way to get back up. And if that is just getting out of bed in the morning, that to me is strength. And strength of character in that she will stick up for the underdog, and she will follow a story. What I like about her is writing from having a journalist as the main protagonist. I don't think I'd be very good at writing police procedurals, I think they're called, mainly because I didn't want to be too wedded to the you know, the constraints of police work, because you've got to be quite realistic. So I wanted someone that could follow a story and had a reason to follow a story, and not just that the story happened to her. I wanted it to, you know, I didn't want a character that was following a family story or out for revenge or whatever. So I wanted someone that had to follow a story, had a reason to follow a story, but could work slightly out with the legal constraints.
What I quite like about the fact that she's a journalist is it gives you a bit more scope, I think, to choose what your plot lines are. So you have, you know, the Magdalene sisters, you have the contaminated blood scandal, and you have the sexual abuse of you know, young footballers, basically, as the three main themes of your three books.
Definitely, and what, just for anyone that's not read my books, although they're quite harrowing, quite really heartbreaking storylines, I don't put anything salacious in it. There's no, you know, the abuse is, you know what happens. We don't need to tell people what happens with the abuse. Is more the abuse of power and how people in power can get away with things for so long. And it happens all the time. How many times does something happen? I mean, look at Jimmy Savile. How the hell did that happen? My book isn't about Jimmy Savile, my last one, The Quiet Ones, but I certainly took elements of that within this abuse of power. So that's why I wanted Una O'Neill to look into these crimes, and the one with the abuse of the football coach that's abusive. It's not actually the abuse, it's how he managed to operate and get away with it for so long. Tainted blood scandal, again, 5,000 haemophiliacs, more now, have died through contaminated blood. It's one of the biggest medical negligence scandals in the history of the NHS. Maybe next year there'll be a bigger scandal, who knows? And that went on for 30 years and no one's been jailed, or there's no court case, or there's now an inquiry. But so these sort of things that the police wouldn't be investigating, the real life crimes. So they're all, it's a kind of, I always say they're based on real life stories, but they're probably a hybrid of fact and fiction. So they're, and like that, the Magdalene institutions where women were incarcerated, sometimes without limit of time. And again, that's not something the police would look at, but a journalist could certainly look at that, because no real crimes had been committed, but they weren't ones that the police would investigate. So,
just what you touched on there about the current health crisis, I mean, is that something that could provide some sort of inspiration for a future plot?
It certainly could, but I think we're all a bit too, saturated with it just now. I think most people would think, oh, I don't want to read anything about COVID or coronavirus. But there are a few, like there's an author, a Scottish author, Leslie Kelly, and she's quite ahead of the curve. She's had a series out, I think it's the fourth one that's out now, and it's the Health of Strangers series, and it is about a world living in lockdown and living during a pandemic. So she's way ahead of the curve with that. But for me, I wouldn't do something on coronavirus, but I would pull elements, when I'm seeing things that politicians are saying, I'm like, okay, that's a good one, I'll stick that, and I can slot it in. For the main part, people won't actually feature it as a storyline. And the thing is, because by the time anything written now, by the time that's published, we will know what's happening in a year's time, so it'll already be out of date, and if they get it wrong, so it may be they'll touch on it, like it may be a story that, you know, a character was in a house unable to get to certain places and things that happened to them because of lockdown. So that may be a basis of a story, but the actual virus, I'm not sure. Not for me.
In addition to your books, you're also doing a podcast, I believe?
I certainly am. I'm so excited. It's called the Tartan Wash Show, and it's produced by Janice Forsyth's company, thebiglight.com. So if you check out the Tartan Wash Show, I think you can just find it online under the Tartan Wash Show on podcast. And it's great because each week we interview a Tartan War author. So we interview a Scottish author. So we've had Val McDermid, Helen Fitzgerald, who wrote The Cry. She's based in Glasgow. We've had Liam McIlvanney, who is the very famous William McIlvanney's son. Liam's a lovely chap. He's a professor of Scottish literature. He's from Kilmarnock, but he's now living in New Zealand. So he's got a great take on, how Tartan War is viewed in New Zealand. So we've got some great names. We're having Peter May coming soon. I think he'll be out in May, and Denise Mina, and several others. So
we do some great crime authors in Scotland, don't we?
You know, this is something that I ask people every week during the podcast, and I ask other authors, why is Scotland such a rich seam of crime authors? And I think it comes from the early days, you know, because you get Scandi Noir, you've got the Scottish crime, and I think it's just this history and our tradition of mythology and Gothic, dark, creepy, from Conan Doyle, Burke and Hare, and right further back, Sonny Bean. If you've never heard of Sonny Bean, it's supposedly a mythical character. I believe him. Head of a family of cannibals in Ayrshire. So we've just got such a rich seam of, and we invented Halloween in Scotland, as we did. So we've got such a rich seam of telling like horror stories and mysteries and things that just capture your heart. And I think it's just spilled over into modern day. Now it used to be that crime was a bit of the kind of poor relation of literature. And now I think it's a well-respected genre in its own right. Well, other people's maybe, I don't know, mine.
No, it is. Fantastic. I really, really enjoy it. Theresa, thank you so much for talking to me today. It was great. Thanks for all your thoughts about crime and about the Groundhog Day that we're all facing. And we'll see you on the other side.
Oh, thank you. I haven't had a chance to show you my tea cozies yet. I've got lots of tea cozies. I've got my teapot. It's full of gin. It's great. I know, I'm so glad. Thank you for not making me clean the kitchen. It was so kind.
Never.
No, thanks very much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully I'll see you soon.